Lily has always loved the forest near her grandmother's house. The 10-year-old girl could spend hours exploring the winding paths, picking berries and watching the animals. But this time, everything went wrong. It was a warm summer evening. Lily was playing at the edge of the forest, chasing a brightly colored butterfly. She did not notice how the sun began to set, and the forest was filled with shadows. When Lily finally looked back, she realized that she had gone too far. Fear was slowly creeping up on her. The trees that had seemed friendly during the day now looked threatening. The wind whispered between the branches, making eerie sounds. "Grandma! Mom!" Lily shouted, but only the echo answered her. She walked forward, hoping to find her way back, but with each step the forest grew darker and denser. It seemed to Lily that the trees were moving, blocking her path. Suddenly she heard a familiar voice. "Lily, dear, where are you?" The girl's heart beat faster. It was her mom's voice. Lily ran toward the sound, feeling relieved. "Mommy, I'm here. I'm lost." A silhouette appeared between the trees. Lily ran toward it, but suddenly froze. Something was wrong. The creature before her had her mother's face, but it was distorted by an unnatural, evil smile. The eyes glowed red in the darkness, and sharp fangs protruded from its mouth. The body was thin and elongated, with long clawed fingers reaching out to Lily. "What's wrong, sweetheart? Aren't you glad to see your mommy?" The creature squeaked out in a voice similar to her mother's, but with eerie overtones. Lily screamed and started running. She ran through bushes and fallen trees, hearing the creature's heavy breathing behind her. "Lily, don't run away from your mommy. I've missed you so much." A familiar and yet strange voice called behind her. Branches scratched Lily's face and arms, but fear drove her forward. She didn't understand what was happening, but she knew it wasn't her mom. Suddenly, Lily jumped out into a small clearing. In the middle of it stood an old, abandoned house. Without hesitation, the girl ran inside and closed the door. In the darkness of the house, Lily tried to catch her breath. She could hear the creature walking around, scratching the walls and calling her in her mother's voice. "Lily, honey, why are you hiding from your mommy? I just want to hug you." The girl covered her ears with her hands, trying not to listen to this terrible voice. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Suddenly, the door cracked open. The creature stood on the threshold, its eyes glowing in the darkness. "There you are, my little one. Come to mommy," it whispered, holding out its long, bony arms. Lily pressed herself against the wall, realizing she had nowhere to go. "You're not my mom," she whispered in a trembling voice. The creature laughed, an eerie laugh that sounded like a mixture of a mother's voice and metal scraping. "Oh, but I'm better than your mom, Lily. I will never leave you. We'll be together. Forever." The last thing Lily saw was her mother's distorted face coming toward her in the darkness, and then everything was swallowed up in darkness. The next morning, the search team found an old house in the woods. Lily's red shoe was on the floor, but the girl herself was nowhere to be found. Since then, in that forest, you can sometimes hear children's laughter and see a little girl playing between the trees. And next to her is a tall female figure with unnaturally long arms. But as soon as you blink, they disappear, leaving behind only a feeling of cold and fear. Mike Turner has always considered himself an experienced hiker. He had hiked dozens of routes, but the Black Forest beckoned him with its mystery. The locals warned him not to go there, especially at night, telling legends of strange creatures and people who went missing. Mike just smiled, considering it superstition. The morning was clear when Mike set out on his hike. He planned to be back by sunset. The first few hours were great. Mike enjoyed the beauty of the wilderness, photographed rare birds, and even found an old Indian burial ground. But in the afternoon, the weather changed dramatically. The sky became overcast with heavy clouds, and the forest became unusually dark. Mike realized that he was off track. His GPS didn't work, and his compass was pointing in different directions as if it had gone crazy. At dusk, the forest seemed to come alive. The wind howled between the trees, creating sounds like moans. Shadows moved in the periphery of Mike's vision, but when he turned around, there was no one there. Suddenly, he heard branches snapping behind him. Turning around, Mike saw something that changed his life forever. A giant creature stepped out of the darkness. Its body resembled that of a bear, but it was 3 times larger. Instead of a head, a giant deer skull with branched horns stuck out from its massive neck. The empty eye sockets glowed with an eerie red light. Mike screamed and ran. He ran through the thicket, tripping over roots and falling. Branches scratched his face and arms, but adrenaline drove him forward. Behind him, he could hear the monster's heavy breathing and the cracking of the trees. It was breaking on its way. When Mike jumped into the clearing, he saw an old stone well. Without hesitation, he jumped into it, hoping to hide from the monster. The fall seemed endless. When Mike finally hit the bottom, he realized that he was in some kind of underground cave. It was dark and damp, but at least he was safe from the monster above. Mike took out his phone to shine a light, but it wouldn't turn on. In complete darkness, he felt the cave wall and slowly walked along it, hoping to find a way out. Hours passed by. Mike lost track of time. He was thirsty and hungry. Sometimes he thought he heard distant voices or saw flickering light, but each time it turned out to be an illusion. Suddenly, Mike heard a rustling up ahead. At first quiet, it grew louder and louder, and then dozens of pairs of red eyes flashed in the darkness. With horror, Mike realized that he was in the lair of these creatures. They surrounded him on all sides, slowly approaching. In the dim glow of their eyes, he saw dozens of monsters just like them, with bear bodies and deer skulls for heads. Mike screamed, but he knew no one would hear him. He tried to run, but stumbled and fell. The last thing he felt were dozens of bony paws grabbing him and sharp teeth digging into his body. A week later, a search party found Mike's backpack and camera near an old well. The camera had one last photo on it, a blurry shot of something large with a deer skull for a head. But Mike himself was never found. Locals now avoid the Black Forest. They say that on moonless nights they can hear screams coming from deep in the forest and see red lights between the trees. And sometimes they find huge tracks on the edge of the forest, similar to bear tracks, but 3 times bigger. The Black Forest keeps its secrets, and woe betide anyone who dares to disturb its ancient inhabitants. Tommy has always loved horses. When he was 10 years old, he dreamed of having his own horse someday. So when his father suggested that he go to his Uncle Jim's ranch, Tommy was thrilled. The ranch was located far in the mountains, surrounded by dense forests. When they arrived, Uncle Jim looked worried. "Something strange has been going on lately," he said. "Animals are disappearing, and there are strange noises coming from the forest at night." Tommy didn't pay attention to these words. He couldn't wait to see the horses. The next morning, Tommy woke up early and went out on the veranda. The fog had not yet cleared, and the boy saw the silhouette of a horse at the edge of the field. Excited, he ran toward it. But when Tommy got closer, he froze in terror. It was no ordinary horse. It had 8 long, thin legs, like a spider's. Its body was covered in black, shiny skin, and 8 red eyes glowed on its head. The creature turned its head toward Tommy and let out a terrible chuckle. The boy screamed and ran back into the house. "Dad! Uncle Jim!" he shouted. "There's a monster out there!" Tommy's father, Mark, ran out with his rifle, followed by Uncle Jim. They saw the creature at the edge of the field. "Oh my God!" Uncle Jim whispered. "What the hell is that thing?" The creature suddenly rushed toward them with incredible speed. Its 8 legs moved like a blurry vortex. "Run!" Mark shouted, pushing Tommy toward the house. But it was too late. The creature overtook them in seconds. Tommy watched in horror as it pounced on his father. Mark fired, but the bullet didn't seem to hurt the creature. "Tommy, run!" were his father's last words before the creature covered him with its body. Tommy ran, tears in his eyes. He heard Uncle Jim yelling behind him, but he didn't dare look back. The boy ran to the forest, hoping to hide between the trees. But he heard the creature approaching, its hooves and paws pounding the ground like death drums. Tommy tripped over a root and fell. When he turned around, he saw the creature looming over him, its 8 eyes glowing with hunger. The last thing Tommy heard was an eerie snarl that turned into a triumphant roar. A few days later, the police found the abandoned ranch. Neither Tommy, his father, nor Uncle Jim were there. The only clue was the strange footprints around the house, as if from a horse but with 8 legs.